Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It's your Cape Crusader Cody, and we are keeping it geekly with our new friend, Russ Casseday. We're here to break down charms and everything in between. Russ, welcome to the stream, fellow Ohioan. You know, I always love showing that Ohio love, man. Welcome. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. This is, I love supporting Ohio folks as well, so I was happy to get on your show. We do a lot of comic shows in Ohio, so the more we can get our name out there, my wife and I, with our book, it's just, support the state kind of stuff.
I'm gonna have to hit you up backstage because I've been looking for some events in Ohio to start going to. I know there's one in Toledo that's coming up in March. My good friend Devin was telling me about. I think it's like Trificon or something like that.
Yeah, there's a ton. I mean, Kalahari Resort does one. They're in Sandusky. It's I forget what it's called now, but it's huge. It's a big one. But they're all over the place.
No, I'm definitely gonna have to check that out. But let's talk about what we're here today to talk about, and that is charms. So, is this like a collaboration between you and your wife?
Yeah, so I basically, a few years ago, it was back in 2019, I had an idea, just driving, right? I'm driving somewhere and I have this idea pops in my head and it's, a girl, obviously I have I have a teenage daughter and the image was her basically throwing an animal charm and an animal coming to life, to fight beside her. And so then, I progressed that a little bit further and figured that she would have a bear, a wolf, a cheetah, and a hawk. Those were going to be her 4 animal charms. And I had a buddy who's in the Philippines, so I used to do commissions. So I do a lot of art prints at shows. So I'll commission artists to draw for me. I'm a colorist, so I'll color the prints and then, sell them at shows. I'm a doodler. I don't really draw, as well as some of these other guys. So, I'll commission an artist to draw for me to make prints. But anyway, so I reached out to Frances and I'm like, hey, I had this idea for a comic book called Charms. And I'm like, can you draw this basic concept for me? And at the time, she was only like 12. I had her like 12 to 13, because I figured, her with, these monstrous animals surrounding her, I thought that would just be like an awesome presence kind of thing. And I reached out and talked to a guy local to me, James Patrick. He's a writer. He's written for Batman, Green Arrow, Harley Quinn. Recently, he's done a lot of work for Aftershock with Astronaut Down and Kaiju Score, and they're doing really well. So he's my editor on the book. So I went to him and I'm like, hey, does this seem like this would be a good idea, a good concept? And he's like, it sounds pretty interesting, and it hasn't been done before. So if you can come up with a good story, it should do pretty decent. So COVID hit and it kind of fizzled everything out. And at that time when COVID hit, like I said, I'm a colorist. So I've colored a lot of covers and interior books. And I started about late 2018. So I've been going at it for just over 4 years. I've colored over 450 sequential pages for indie comics.
Wow.
I've done over 80 indie covers, colored over 80 indie covers. A lot for the same company, same companies and whatnot. But, it's when you get comfortable with somebody, they stick with you. So I've done, I started doing all that work and then I got into crowdfunding and setting up crowdfunding campaigns for folks. Me being an IT guy for over 20 years, a lot of this stuff, I can figure it out pretty quickly. So, some of these folks that, would rather be doing other things like drawing and everything else and not spending so much time building crowdfunding campaigns, it makes sense to hire someone like me who can do it, quickly and, get it done. And I've learned a lot to be able to help them with their campaigns, instead of just doing it and, being able to actually contribute. So after sometime in like 2021, I told my wife, I'm like, we were coming back from a show or something late in the year, right when COVID was kind of, shows were just starting to open up kind of thing. And And I told my wife about, about the idea for the comic, and she's like, "Oh, you could do this and this and this." And now my wife is a therapist. She's a director of behavioral health for a federally qualified medical facility in West Virginia. So she's a therapist, but she reads a lot, and she wrote a lot of stuff. She still writes. She writes grants and everything else. So she has to be able to write in order to get grants, and it's a different kind of writing, but she reads a lot of novels, Harry Potter, everything. She'll devour a 500-page novel in a night. She just won't sleep. It's insane. So she starts rattling off all these ideas, and I'm like, well, why don't you just write it? I'm like, I'm not a writer. I only really care about the art. I'm like, it's better to have someone that really cares about the story and just grabs a hold of it and makes it their own. And she's like, no, that's not a thing. And I'm kind of like, so I just kept, she kept pushing on her a little bit. And by the time we got home, she's like, fine, I'll do it. So she wrote the first book, and it was interesting, because I doing these crowdfunding campaigns for folks, and I also resize pages, put logos on covers. Sometimes I'll design logos, edit books. I've learned the whole printing process. So I actually order people will just have me order their books for them, because I work with so many different printers now that I know what the printers want when someone needs to submit a book to them. I know how to make sure the pages are the right sizes, build the PDF for the digital file, and for the backers and everything else. So that's just stuff that I've learned over these last 3-4 years of doing this. So I had a very good concept of how to do the comic book, but I never done a script for a comic book before. So when she wrote book one, it was one page. She wrote it on a piece of paper, and it was page 1, this happens, page 2, this happens, page 3, this happens, page 4, this happens, through page 24, 1 to 24, right? It was very basic. I knew I needed to hire an artist that would be able to decipher that and turn it into a well done page, right? So I contacted Nate Lovett, who's out of Columbus. Nate he's done some ghost work for Marvel and whatnot, but he's also done his own comic book, Punk Rock Ninja, and he's done a lot of work for Nickelodeon. Just Paw Patrol. He just did a Golden book for the old '80s Dungeons and Dragons.
It's really impressive. You got some pretty big names, with the editor and with this guy as well.
Yeah.
Real quick, we have Vike Do over on YouTube stopping in and say hello and complimenting you on how much work you put in and saying that it's pretty sick. Yeah, it's awesome. How you started. You just started. The work just started flowing.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I think a lot of it is just being nice, right? Just being nice to people and trying to be helpful. When people see that you're trying to be helpful and you're not trying to really gain anything out of it, they're more willing to recommend you to other people. So basically, to steer away from charms a little bit, when I started doing the crowdfunding, I was helping a buddy do a series called Hellbringers, Mark May, and he did pretty. He was doing pretty decent for each book. He's done 7 books now over the last year, but it kind of branched out from there. Once I figured out how to do that, Morant Michaels, who owns Counterpoint Comics, I color, edit, do a lot of. I manage his website and do a lot of other things. He's like, hey, you want to go ahead and just do my Kickstarters as well? And I'm like, sure, no problem. Now, Morant has been in the industry for over 30 years. He was Rob Liefeld's first assistant at Image Comics. He was friends with Rob in high school before they were both into comics. So, so basically Morant he's been around forever. He's worked on everything, Deadpool, everything. And he has the popular comic called Do You Poo right now, which is it's Winnie the Pooh as Deadpool. And it's just a parody comic, and it does very well. But so once I started doing the stuff for Morant, it just kind of snowballed. Dan Mendoza, who does the Still Ill, he does Zombie Tramp. which is huge. Um, Dan's like, well, hey, since you're doing Marat stuff, you want to do my stuff? And I'm like, sure. And it just kept going. So, and now Ron Zabala, who does some pretty big Kickstarters as well, has reached out, and I'll probably start doing some of his stuff as well. I've talked to Billy Tucci, who does about doing some of his backer kit surveys. So some of the biggest earners on Kickstarter really, I'm starting to for indie comics anyways. I'm starting to build up some steam to be doing all of them.
No, that's really cool. We have Vike over on YouTube saying he's actually seen some of that work too. So small world. It's really cool to see your experiences grow. During COVID seemed like it was a time for a lot of different creators to kind of like sit down and buckle down and really pursue their creative dreams.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it just snowballed.
So was Charms like your first like introduction into like creating your own like creator owned like title?
So yeah, my own title. Yes, it was for sure. Marat had let me do. He does another book called Naughty and Nice, two female vigilantes, and last year he let me do the Halloween book, the Halloween holiday for 2022. He let me hire an artist, do the script, which my wife helped me with. And that gave us a little bit of it let us, see what it was going to be like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hire the artist, and then I colored it. Well, actually, we did it in black and white. I colored certain aspects of it. We did covers and everything. So it gave me a really good idea of, everything. And I had already been doing the pre-print stuff, the post-production kind of stuff, and then working with printers to get everything printed. So, when we decided, I'm like, hey, let's go ahead and we started. So last year was 2022. So we started. I hired Nate. Right, near the last couple months of 2021, he started turning in pages, and then we did our Kickstarter March April time frame of 2022, and then we did the second issue November December, right at the end of last year.
Real quick, we have Vike over on YouTube. This may be off topic, but as a colorist, what are your rates usually? And if that's a question you don't want to answer, feel free to...
No, that's fine. So, I mean, like I said, I'm an IT guy. I have a very nice, cushy job. I work from home 4 days out of the week. So it allows me to actually charge less money than what a lot of other folks do. So usually for covers, I charge about $45 a cover. And I haven't really been doing too many sequentials because last year I did about 40 crowdfunding campaigns.
Yeah.
And this year, it's looking like I'm going to be doing 5 a month at least. So I may hit 60 this year. So I mean, it hasn't really left a lot of time for coloring, but I do have a lot of colorist friends that I basically farm out to.
Mm-hmm. No, that is so cool, and it has to be like, I don't like. Surreal to be surrounded by so many big names in the field too.
Well, I'll tell you this story. This is what makes me laugh. Okay, so there was this lady who was on Facebook, and same circle of friends, and she was basically asking if anyone could help her learn to color in Procreate. Now, Procreate is an app on the iPad that a lot of folks use to color.
Mm-hmm.
It's very user friendly. It's a lot more user-friendly than something like Photoshop. And the iPad is just, it's mobile, so it makes it really nice to be able to move around. So, but anyways, I'm like, hey, I reached out to her, and I'm like, just being a nice person, I have no idea who she is. And I'm like, hey, I've only been doing it for a couple years, but maybe I can show you a couple things that will just speed up your learning process to get you going. So we talked a couple times. And I'm and I'm explaining a couple things here and there, and she's like, yeah, Shannon says that. And I'm like, okay. So we're going on in the conversation. She's like, yeah, Shannon mentioned that too. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm like, who's Shannon? And she's like, Shannon Mayer. And I'm like, oh, Shannon Mayer? And she's like, he's my boyfriend. And I'm like, why are you asking
Yeah, why are
someone
you
else
asking
how to
me?
color? Like Shannon Mara, Marvel DC, he's like a premier Marvel and DC cover artist, and he just recently, last year launched his own first book,
Hmm.
Sirens, on through Dynamite, and I'm just like, and this was like 2 years ago that this happened, and so I'm like, oh, okay, I'm like, that's cool, your boyfriend is Shannon Mare. So fast forward to last year when we went, and I, since then I had worked with Becky, and her Becky Fuller is her name,
Hmm.
and I had gotten helped her to get a couple coloring gigs here and there, and I had her flat. So when you color things, you usually hire a flatter, because the most time consuming part of coloring is filling in everything. So you get a flatter, and sometimes they'll use a program in Photoshop to fill in all the white spaces basically, and it
Oh,
makes it
that's
easier for you.
cheating.
Yeah, it makes it easier for you as a colorist
Hmm.
to highlight certain colors and then change it to the color you want, and then you do the shading and everything, right? It just speeds up everything. And so I was having her do that, and then getting her into doing the shading and that kind of stuff. And she'd gotten several gigs and whatnot, and even on her own, she kind of took off a little bit. And so when we went to do Charms One, I'm like, hey Becky, I'm like, I know Shannon. I figure Shannon is probably pretty expensive. I'd love to have Shannon do a cover, um, but I might not be able to pay what Marvel and DC paid it, but I can do my best. And she's like, dude, she's like, Shannon wants to do a cover for you because you helped me out. And I was like, seriously? And she's like, absolutely. So he did a cover
You know,
for issue one.
I'm almost wondering if the reason he didn't like teach her is because he probably was too busy doing work of his own, right? Like it's probably one of those things
Well,
where she kept asking him, and he's like, "Yeah, I eventually, you know."
well, and I think the big thing is that there is a difference. There is a difference between applications, right?
Hmm.
Photoshop is not the same as Procreate. The buttons aren't even the same. It's just different. So when she's trying to learn, a different application than what he's used to using, he can basically help with coloring fundamentals, but he
Hmm.
can't help where buttons are,
Yeah.
in the application and to do exactly. He's like, well, in Photoshop, I do it like this. I don't know how you do it in Procreate. So I think it was a lot of that, just the
Hmm.
differences in the application. So, and it's funny because she even came back and was teaching me some things about Procreate that she had learned. And it's really cool. It's awesome, when you can, help someone, and then they're able to later on help you as well. It's such a good feeling, to,
Hmm.
to build that kind of a network with other indie creators. Um, like I said, Marat has opened the door. Just working with Marat for the last 4 years. I mean, people are like, "Oh, you work with people now know that I work with Marat." So, it opens the door.
I think
What
right now, let's go ahead and use this opportunity and open the door over to Charm's crowdfunder campaign. I know you said
Sure.
this was currently over, but it's still opened up as a store, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah. One of the nice things about Crowdfunder, when Kickstarter ends, it ends, right? It's done.
Hmm.
You can't add anything afterwards. Indiegogo has an in-demand feature where it just, it lasts for as long as you want it to go. Crowdfunder has something similar, and that is, when the campaign ends, at, I picked 30 days, so it ran for 30 days. But then I had a lot of people that I knew were planning on backing it that hadn't. So I didn't click the end button. So it just basically continues on, like a running store.
No,
And
that's really cool.
I had probably 11 or 12 people back after the end date.
Hmm.
So yeah, it worked out for us to leave it open. So
So
so this one is Charms 2, okay? But you can get Charms 1 on this campaign. Um,
I love the little Pokemon Easter egg right here. You
it,
know, we
those
had
are
these.
those are those are prints that I actually made for to sell at shows,
Okay.
and the artist drew spots for posters on the wall. I'm like, hey, I'll stick some of the some of the prints that I've done it for shows.
No, that is so cool. And then, so I assume these are the four animals, the four different charms.
Yeah, so at the end of at the end of issue 1, we left off with a cliffhanger, which was just the 4 squares. So the 4 animal faces. Okay, and what's happening is she's basically dreaming, and she's dreaming about these 4 animals. She has no idea why she's dreaming about these 4 animals. But by the time you get to the end of this book, she knows why she's dreaming about the 4 animals.
Mm-hmm.
So the first book mainly is a character introduction story, and we have a group of people that are infiltrating a military compound, right? And it's going back and forth between their battle trying to rescue these people and these 3 teenagers. We're introducing you to these 3 teenagers, which are Caitlin, Joe, and Brady. And it's just back and forth between the battle, and Caitlin and Joe are entering into a karate tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time you get to the end of the book, the end of the first issue, you've discovered something. Okay, you've discovered how those 2 stories intermix with each other. And then, when we start book 2, we've got her having a dream with her animals, or about these animals. And then, if you scroll down to that next page, it's the day after, or, maybe even a couple days after, these folks have infiltrated this base, and they're doing a debrief. And then some of them are going to leave, to go home, and some of them have to go on another mission.
So as a colorist, like, how long did this page take you to color? Because there's a lot going on here.
So Nate Lovett, the artist, I had him color this page to be a guide, because I love the way that he knows the colors that best fit his art style.
Okay.
So I had him color this page, and so that we could use it as a guide for the other pages.
Like for like a color palette guide?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So it just, and there's another page that I had him do as well, and it just really set up the how the book was going to look, with all the pages. So that's why when you scroll up to the other pages, it just set the tone for the other pages.
Yeah, I gotcha. Oh yeah, these colors are gorgeous too. So you've been coloring for how many years?
About 4.
So how's it feel to be like coloring on your first like creator-owned like IP? Like that has to be such an awesome feeling.
It is for sure. I mean, like I said, I've done over 450 sequential pages for Naughty and Nice, Hellbringers, just lots of awesome books. So it definitely prepared me, to do this. And it does. I mean, it's awesome. My wife wrote everything. It's interesting, because I letter the book as well. I use an application called Comic Life 3. It just simplifies everything. You drag the page into the application, you drag the bubbles where you want them to go. You type your words in there. So I letter everything, and then I basically let her come back through, based off of her script, let her come back through and make everything better. Basically just buff everything out and make it sound how she has it envisioned in her head.
So do you get to like really touch the script at all? Like, is there any like, does she come to you and like, hey, do you think this works in the story, or does she have like complete like creative control?
She gets mad at me because like I said, when I'm driving, I have these thoughts. Dude, it's so weird how it works. And I'm like, hey, we got to do this. And she's like, ugh. She's like, fine. Sometimes there's a little more arguing back and forth than that, but she's like, she usually finds a way to work it in though.
I love this cover too, right here, cover E.
Yeah, so Craig Belangle, this is his first cover. He's never done a cover before. I had him do the animated video. And when the animated video, he's my animation guy. He's up in Toronto. We're doing something different in this book. I'm an IT guy, right? So I gotta bring my IT in here. So if you scroll up a little ways, there's a little video in here.
Oh.
So, yep, right there. So if you click on that, Like, you don't have to watch them to understand the story, but um, they'll enhance the story a little bit. They're basically gonna be the thought bubbles that she's having in the story.
Okay.
So basically, the reader will be able to scan the QR code with their phone while they're reading the book, and they'll get the video
That's
of
cool.
of,
Yeah.
of her talking through something that happens on the page, just to give it, just to give a little extra. It is a teen plus book. It's a PG book, and it shows we sell to a lot of teens and moms, and we want to give those teens want something more than just reading,
Mm-hmm.
and that interaction we're hoping gives them some more.
Yeah, we tried to. I had a podcast before Keeping It Geekly called Talk Geekly, and we tried to do something like that too, where we would do like weekly sit downs where we talk comic books and geek culture news and such. And we tried to have that, like where we had puppets of us, so we wouldn't have to actually videotape ourselves. We would just have the puppets talk, and then we could be like behind screen and everything.
Yeah.
It's a really cool concept. It can be hard to get pulled off though, so that's impressive that you guys are doing that, especially with the QR code. I really like that. And then right here is another look at the creative team as well, everyone that was involved. A lot of awesome cover artists as well. So we're at Charms issue 1, issue 2. How many issues are you looking at for the complete run? Like, do you have a number like in your head?
Yeah, so this initial is 4. This is the origin story, right? This is how they become their little team. We start out in book 1 where it's the 3 teenagers, right? We don't know, they're just buddies. But by the time we get to book 4, we're gonna understand they're more than just buddies. They're 3 friends for a reason. It's really like a combination of Harry Potter meets Pokemon in a way. But there's some other interesting concepts that I really didn't think about. When I had this idea, they didn't pop in my head. Like I never watched Brave Star, the cartoon, the cowboy cartoon with the robotic horse. He has the strength of a bear or the ears of a wolf or whatever. He doesn't have those specific animals, but he gets their powers or something like that. He's an Native American. So it's interesting when I saw that cartoon, and on YouTube or something, it popped up, and I'm just like, what? I'm like, oh crap. Then I had to watch it to make sure that I wasn't infringing in any way, which I'm not. But DC's Vixen, she has that necklace, and she can like summon the strength of an elephant and that kind of stuff. But the way that the charms are going to work is that Caitlin is going to the charms are going to be like a token. And she's able to call the animals from another plane. So the animals are all going to exist in another plane, and she brings them to the charm. And we had to have it because the animals are going to get hurt, right? Bad guys have guns. They're going to shoot the animals. The animals are going to have special abilities. Like I might give the bear bulletproof. They make it's all different kinds of cool powers, right? But they're gonna have to get hurt.
Yeah.
They can't be indestructible. But when they get hurt, what happens? We had to think of what happens to the animal when it gets hurt. Boom, it goes back to the charm. And the three main characters, as you'll find out in issue 2, that 2 of them they each have different abilities. One's the charm bearer, one is a forger, and one is a magician. Okay, then they all 3 work together. So by me saying forger, that tells you that when the animal gets turned back to the charm, someone has to fix that charm. And
so does the charm get like broken or damaged?
Damaged, right?
Okay.
It's and I didn't think, like I said again, I didn't think about this. I never played D&D. Now I know who Driss Duorden is, okay, because he's from D&D, but he used to have a little onyx cat, and he was able to call. I cannot pronounce the panther's name, Guinevere or something like that, from this onyx idol, and. So it's interesting. It's interesting discovering all of this stuff after we've meshed everything out for the comic book, and I'm like, "Oh crap!" But then it's like, you know what? No, that's kind of cool because now it's not the only concept like that. There's other similar things that you can draw parallels to, so that people can understand and relate.
Yeah,
So,
no, absolutely. I think because It's easier to, when you're trying to explain this, like, hey, it's similar to this,
Right,
instead of just
exactly.
trying to break down the nitty gritty. No, I
Right,
totally
right.
get that.
Yeah,
So,
sometimes when you try to explain something, you just drivel on for 20 minutes and they're just still like, I don't know.
how long is issue 3 off? Like, when are you guys looking at starting the
We're,
campaign for that?
yeah, so we'll be doing 3 this spring, probably May, June, and then we'll be doing book 4 at the end of the year. So the plan was to do all 4 books within 2 years, and then to do a trade paperback and try to get that hopefully picked up by a bigger publisher to get it out there a little bit.
No, that is so cool. So what's outside issue 3, issue 4, what else are you working on this year? Any big plans or any big projects for 2023?
As far as my own stuff, not really. I've basically given Sarah some concepts for future books, and I like the whole Lady Death mentality of doing 1 or 2 issues or a bigger graphic novel, 48-page, 62-page books instead of trying to space out all of these books. We're funding all of this stuff up front,
Mm-hmm.
so I'd probably rather do a thicker book and be able to get it out and have it finished instead of just doing 1, 2, 3, and 4. I just knew this was going to be a bigger story, and trying to pay for the whole thing up front was going to be a little more painful. So that's why we broke it up into separate issues. Book 1 was 25 pages. This one, book 2, was 31 pages. So I'm hoping we can stay closer to the 24-page mark because it makes it a little more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But I've got Tony Moy's going to do a cover. He's an awesome watercolorist. So Tony's going to do a cover for us for the next issue. Steph Wilson, who is a big indie artist, is going to do a cover for us. Marat Michaels is going to do a cover and for us as well, but I think I'm going to save him for issue 4. Adelso Corona, I've been doing some work with Adelso. I set up his website. Adelso is an inker. He inked Rob Liefeld for Major X, for the Snake Eyes series for IDW. He's inking Brett Booth for Gunslinger Spawn right now, but he also draws. He draws very well.
Mm-hmm.
He's an awesome artist, so he's going to do a cover for me as well. So I don't know if we'll do that for book 3 or 4. Sajjad Shah, who is another friend of theirs, he'll do a cover as well. I've set up a website for him, so it's one of those things where when you're able to exchange work with folks, they appreciate it and they say, "Yeah, I'll do a cover for you," and it's awesome.
Yeah.
Drax Gal, that serial cover. Drax Gal, he's one of the interior artists for Zombie Tramp for Dan, and does some other books and covers. He did that serial cover, and people love that serial cover. It was just a strange idea. I mean, Charms. I mean, it just fit, I'm like, Charms. I'm like, Lucky Charms. Let's do a cereal box.
Yeah, no, and I love how she's throwing the Charms into the cereal. It's like just perfect.
Yeah.
Russ, thank you so much for coming by, breaking down Charms issue 1 and 2, and giving us so much awesome information in between. Before we let you go, though, everyone watching, right here is the link. This is still active right now as of today, the Crowdfunder store. So be sure to go there, check out Charms issue 1 and 2. Pick up a copy as well. It's just a few days after New Comic Book Day as well, so treat yourself. Now, Russ, before we let you go, I always love asking for a little bit of advice, because as much as this is a show where we really capitalize on you and your book, it's also a nice platform where other new creators can maybe learn a little bit, something they can take away for themselves. So with that being said, for anyone out there who is looking to get started with, the art side of things, the writing side of things, or anything in between, what advice would you have for them just to kind of help them get motivated and going?
Sure. I think the big thing to understand is that when you go to do your own book, if you want to do your own book, you have to understand that comics are not a get-rich scheme. They're just not. As much of a dream as it is for all of us to do our own comic book, it's a get-broke scheme. And you really have to surround yourself with great people. Make sure that you can offer them something if you're looking for them to offer you something. It has to be a give and take relationship. Surround yourself with a good team, people that you trust. They're not going to flake out. And then when it comes to crowdfunding, make sure you do your research. You want your project, your cover is like your store window. And if it doesn't make people stop and look, then they're not going to stop and look.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it doesn't, crowdfunding is awesome, but 70% or more of the people that are backing crowdfunding projects are collectors, and they're not even necessarily reading the book. They buy it for a pretty cover, and they get it and they put it in a box, and it
Yep.
probably is never read. And it's very, I mean, that's as someone creating a comic book, that's a very difficult pill to swallow. So I recommend that, if you're going to do your first campaign, I would check out Crowdfunder. And that's Crowdfunder with no E. It's just DR at the end, Crowdfunder, because they have some nice options as far as having your backers pay your fees. So instead of you paying Kickstarter or Indiegogo 8.5% for your Stripe fee and their fee, Crowdfunder basically asks your backers to cover their cost of their fee, and that might be $2 or $3 or $5, and 90% of them cover it. So when we did Crowdfunder for Charms 2, my effective pay that I had to pay, my rate for Crowdfunder was 1.2%.
Ooh, that's...
Yeah, my backers paid almost all of my fees.
And those percentages can get pretty high depending on how big the campaign is. The campaign for you guys was roughly what, 2,000?
Well, so when we did our Kickstarter campaign, we hit almost $7,000 earlier in the year.
Wow.
But that's because we had that Shannon Merrick cover. The Shannon Merrick cover made about $4,000.
That's wild.
Yeah. So by the time I subtracted out the Shannon covers, right, and then I subtracted out Kickstarter fees and shipping fees, we were at about $1,900, which was insane. Which is not, I'm still not upset at that cost, or at that amount, because it was a first book. I'm a nobody. It's so hard to get eyes on your book. So when we did Crowdfunder, now we're at $2,700, almost $2,800, and that does not include the shipping or the other fees. So I actually ended up getting paid closer to $3,500 with the shipping cost, but the fees I didn't have to pay them because the backers paid the fees.
No, that is so awesome.
Yeah,
that is awesome. Russ, thank you so much for such sound advice as well. We actually have David coming on the show this upcoming Monday to talk about nonstop tabletop or tabletop nonstop. I always get them twisted. Yep. So we're getting ready to talk about their creative spotlight for that coming up soon. So yeah, we got a lot of love for Crowdfunder over on Keeping It Geekly. So it's awesome to see creator.
I'll add this one last thing. I had an idea. I use Comics Wellspring a lot. So I had an idea and I put it in Dan Hill's mind. He's the chief marketing officer at Comics Wellspring. I said, hey, why don't you guys hook up with Crowdfunder and see what you guys can do? I believe that they are doing some magic over there for new creators. And it's awesome. I made suggestions. They implemented them. A lot of other creators have, put in suggestions they've implemented. They listen to the creator. Kickstarter doesn't. But anyways, so now Crowdfunder and Comics Wellspring have partnered. So if you run your campaign on Crowdfunder and you print with Comics Wellspring, you get a 15% discount on your printing bill.
That's so cool. That's awesome. Yeah. Hey, that's and to know that you kind of help implement that, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a good feeling.
Everyone watching right here is the link to check out Charms 2. Be sure to check it out. Be sure to buy an issue. If you can't back it or buy an issue, simply put it on Facebook, Twitter, or anywhere where you can type, word of mouth is 100% free, and getting as many eyes on this project as possible is what we're trying to do. Russ, thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with us today. Everyone watching, I hope you all have a lovely Friday afternoon, but most importantly, guys, keep it geekly.